How'd you kind of find that style of doing these like superheroes as kids? 'Cause it's really unique.
Drawing children was never like my shtick. It really came essentially out of necessity. All of JL 270 so far just look like the character. It feels like the character. A lot of people think comics are a genre, which they're not. It's a medium that contains multitudes of genres. I did realize at art school that like maybe I do know like a little bit more than the average person about this stuff. They overestimate what they can do in a day, but underestimate what they can do in a year. Just the sheer concept of the character is so strong. I mean, the design of that costume, it's so appealing across all ages. Hey, I'm Yale Stewart. I'm a webcomic artist, most well known for my webcomic called JL8. I also have a creator-owned project that I'm currently working on called Forward the Horizon. And I've done some Superman children's books and various work for clients like Marvel, Dynamite, Image.
How'd you get into comics and creating comics? Because obviously I could see from your collection that you're a big collector, but how'd you start doing it professionally?
I'm kind of trying to think like how far back do you want to go?
Go back as far back as you want.
Yeah, no, I mean it's cliche, but I've been drawing for literally as long as I can remember. One of my earliest memories, whether it's true or not, I don't really know at this point, but I feel like I distinctly recall finger painting Michelangelo, the Ninja Turtle, in preschool. That's one of my earliest memories, period. Which is obviously related to art. And it wasn't because I became aware of comics, not comic characters, but comics. I believe it was first grade, so I would have been like 6 or 7 years old. I had a classmate who had two older brothers that were into comics, so he would like bring them. And this is all also the early '90s, so like a lot of comic related cartoons are on television, so it's like, oh, if you like X-Men, which I did, my brother has these comic books of X-Men, and it's like, what's that? And this person would bring these comics to school, and I realized like, oh, like these are really, really cool. I like these a lot too. It's actually really interesting because I was way into Batman. I recall specifically my mom coming down to our family room in the basement. I was like down there playing with toys or something, and literally just being like, hey, like I think that you might want to come up and watch this TV show. And I don't know why she had the TV on in her room, because it would have been like afternoon cartoons, but I came up to my parents' bedroom, and on the TV, this little black and white TV, was Batman the Animated Series. And I immediately fell in love. And my mom, to her credit, this is back when you could buy comics at like the grocery store and stuff, actually brought me one copy of a Batman comic because she knew that I liked it. And I actually thought that I didn't like comics because I didn't like the Batman comic that she brought home as much as I liked the show. Like, I didn't like the art as much. I remember just not really honestly, I'm not even sure if I read it or not. I distinctly remember that Firefly was involved in it. But yeah, I was kind of like, oh, like I guess I don't really like comics. And then it was later, I guess, when I was in school and my friend brought Marvel comics to school, and I liked those better than I liked the cartoon for their respective properties, right? Like I still preferred Batman animated series over Batman comics, but I liked the X-Men and Spider-Man comics better than I liked the show. And it's not that I didn't like the show. Like I enjoyed the show, but I thought that the comics were just like right?
So which comics were you reading? Like I know like within
whatever
Marvel,
I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
Like when you're that age, and yeah, you could get comics at the grocery store, but they weren't like so easily accessible that you could just kind of like get them wherever, the way that, like people my parents' age, you could just like go wherever and get some.
Right.
So yeah, it was pretty much literally whatever I could find with a preference of X-Men, Spider-Man, And, it was the early 90s, so Spawn.
Yeah.
'Cause
What
I
was
thought,
it about the comics that were better than the TV show for you?
I think
Was it the art or
I think it was the art primarily. Yeah. Because as someone who has gone back and watched some of those shows as an adult, and not only an adult, but an adult with a background in animation, because that's actually what I studied in college. The DC animated shows from the 90s, Batman, Superman, Batman Beyond, really, I mean, like the studios that they were working with and like outsourcing to for some of their work are literally some of like the best animation studios in the world. I mean, there are certain episodes of Batman the Animated Series that were animated by TMS, which is the studio that animated Akira.
Oh, really? I know that.
Yeah, so like Heart of Ice wasn't TMS, but it was a studio called Spectrum, which was like a bunch of former TMS guys, kind of like how Trigger is a bunch of old Gainax employees. So it kind of has like that same quality level, different name, whatever. But like the best looking X-Men animated thing that I've ever seen is the Japanese intro to the cartoon. Like for their localization or whatever. I've never seen an episode of X-Men the Animated Series that looked even half as good as that intro.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you have Joe Madureira drawing X-Men, and it's like, how are you going to compete with that?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Joe Mad is the king, and like the Kubert brothers, and like on Spider-Man, I would have been seeing like Eric Larson's stuff and Ramita Jr. and Bagley and things like that, and it was just more refined, more visually interesting, yada yada yada.
Yeah. Would you say those were some of like your big inspirations in your work?
Yeah, I mean, particularly Ramita Jr. and Joe Mad. I don't know how much I literally have pulled from Joe Mad in my own personal work, but his work is definitely, like when you're a kid, you have those comics that are just like beat to crap because you just read them over and over and over and over, and you try to like copy you try drawing certain panels from the comics or whatever.
Yeah.
And Ramita Jr. and Joe Mad, of the ones that I named, were certainly the ones that would have been like conscious influences going forward. And I think it's because, to me, at that time, and again, just talking about of the people that I named, they, to me, had the most distinct voices. Like to this day, and this is a me thing. Like I have, like my best friend Trad can easily discern between the two, but like I cannot tell you which. Like if you showed me each of their drawings, I couldn't tell you which one is Andy and which one is Adam of the Kubert brothers. Which isn't to say that they're not talented. They are talented, but they don't have that kind of like thing to their work that resonates with me, where like I can just like glance at it and be like, I know exactly who that is. Like you could see a Mignola thing across a crowded room and be like, that's a Mike Mignola drawing.
Yeah.
Or at a far enough distance, maybe someone trying really hard to be Mignola, but once you get close, you can see like, oh no, that's someone imitating Mignola, because Mignola's style is like so deceptively simple that like you can, I mean, it's kind of the same thing with Bruce Timm, right? Where there's just like these little things like proportion ideas or like posing stuff where you can tell, oh, this is someone trying to be that person versus the actual real deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like obviously Bruce Timm was a huge influence just because, growing up watching those shows, being a big fan of those shows. I mean, the list of artistic influences is arguably endless, but yeah.
It sounds like you really know your comics inside and out. You really studied them.
I mean, there's always going to be people who know more. But I did realize at art school that like maybe I do know like a little bit more than the average person about this stuff, because like even friends in like the comics department were like, oh yeah, like we were taking history of comics or whatever, and we were all like, oh, Yale would know Yale would know the answer to this. And I was like, oh, that's flattering, because like they didn't know the answer to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I guess that's kind of flattering. But yeah, no, I mean, I definitely have to put it bluntly, a kind of like obsessive disposition.
Yeah.
When there's something that I like really
Yeah.
glom onto it, get really into it.
So for you, that's always been comics. That's been where you've really.
Well, I mean, primarily, yeah. I mean, it kind of. It's almost like seasonal. Like I'll have like one season will be like I'm just all about comics, because I was also like way into Star Wars as a kid. Like I had like the technical journals, I had those essential guides that were like all the expanded universe information and stuff like that. The first pieces of art I ever like framed and hung on my wall were the blueprints that came with the Kenner toys of like the X-Wing or Snowspeeder or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I'd be like way, way, way into comics for a couple months, and then I'd be way, way into Star Wars, and it would just be like the other thing would go like a little bit on the back burner. It wouldn't be a thing where like you just stop paying attention to it entirely, but it wouldn't be quite as
front of mind.
Yeah, focus of your attention, front of your mind, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, pretty much my entire life, comics have just been the through line. They've not always been the absolute pinnacle of what I was interested in or paying attention to, but they've never gone away, right? Where like there have been periods where I just don't really game much, even though I really love video games and stuff like that. Like there have been years at a time where it just wasn't really something I prioritized.
Right.
There's never really been a time like that where like I don't think that there has been a calendar year since 1992 that I didn't read at least one comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that could be a graphic novel, that could be a volume of manga, it could be a floppy, it could be whatever, but sequential storytelling is just kind of always a part of my life.
Yeah. So this might not be an easy question to answer, but you got to have something. And that is like, what's your like all-time favorite comic book?
So we're going to need to kind of like refine that a little bit, because if we're talking comic book character, it would probably be Spider-Man.
Nice.
If we're talking like single comic story, superhero, maybe Kingdom Come, non-superhero, maybe Blankets. Single issue of a comic, non-superhero, Hellboy in Hell #5, superhero, Peter Parker Spider-Man 75, The Death of Ben Reilly. Like when you're as into it as I am, like it's like asking your favorite kid, right? Like they all have their kind of like different merits and stuff like that.
But is there not one, like for example, let's say for me, like I like reading, so like for me, like there's like one book that comes to mind, like favorite book of all time. Like I have my answer of like.
Yeah, I don't really have that for comics, honestly. Like I said, like you would have to kind of like narrow it down a little bit, because like when you ask me that question, to me it's like crowd noise instead of like one clear. Because like for prose literature, I think I do have one that immediately comes to mind, Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. But when you ask me that question about comics, it's just like a whole lot of noise, like all these different names, like kind of like rushing to the front and center all of a sudden. Because even music, you know, like if you ask me favorite bands, I don't necessarily have one that immediately comes to mind, but I do have maybe like 5 or something. But yeah, with comics, it's just a lot harder. And also, like, I do think some of that's because, like, comics are like 24 pages, right?
Right.
You can read a lot of comics over the course of a lifetime. And like I have friends who read a lot of books, like book a week.
Yeah.
Type thing.
Yeah.
But like if they were reading comics, they'd be reading like 600 comics a week.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
it's a different animal.
A little bit. Yeah, it's almost like who's the favorite person you've ever met in your entire life? And for some people, they do have like that one person. But I think for most people that have had like relatively healthy social lives, there might be at least like a handful of contenders for that title. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's not really a great analogy. Meals would maybe be the better example.
Mm-hmm. Like favorite meal you've ever had.
Your favorite meal you've ever had, period. Not breakfast, not lunch, not dinner, just in general.
Right.
And it's like, oh man, I don't know. I've had some really good dinners. I've had some really good breakfasts.
No, I hear that's a good point. It's well said. So
what's your favorite comic?
I'm not a huge comic book guy personally. I really there's a couple things. When I was a kid, I had this friend who introduced me to Spider-Man. Obviously I knew about Spider-Man, but he introduced me to the comic books. He had it was a compendium. What was it? Was it not the Incredible, the Ultimate? I think the Ultimate Spider-Man. I think was which one? Yeah. And I loved the art style. I loved it, like because there's I don't know all the specifics, but there's the it's kind of like the old-fashioned style artwork, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's very
probably
flat.
would have been Bagley's part of the run. Yeah,
maybe
Mark Bagley's era.
So maybe it's Incredible Spider-Man. I'm not exactly sure, but like I gravitate towards that.
I mean, Ultimate Spider-Man is correct. Yeah, because Ultimate Spider-Man was the original Ultimate Universe launched in, I want to say it was 2000, maybe 2001.
That makes sense.
And the whole point was we need to try to get fresh readers into comics because the continuity has become really difficult and kind of impenetrable for a lot of people. So they got Brian Bendis and Mark Bagley to do Ultimate Spider-Man.
And that was like more like 3D. Like the style was more like there's another line of comics that it's very like flat, the artwork.
I can't reach my copies of it are literally right there, so I was going to grab it to like show you and be like, is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm almost positive it's Ultimate. And so I had this like
I would be authentically surprised if it wasn't Ultimate.
Yeah, so it was this a friend, like it was a family friend who he was kind of like not a babysitter, but like because both my parents worked full time, and so they were like hire this guy to like kind of like, and like I was a very energetic kid, let's just say, and so they like like they'd hire him for like when they were still kind of at work, but I'd get home from school to like kind of come and like entertain me.
Yeah,
and so he was really into Spider-Man and the comics in general, but specifically Spider-Man. He had this thick compendium of, it was basically from the beginning, I don't know how many volumes, but it was a lot. And like I loved it. I still like I remember to this day, like I fell in love with the artwork of it. It was so cool. And I also, similar to your story that you had said at the beginning about your memory of finger painting in and so I had this memory that was actually caught on video when I was it was either first grade or like where kindergarten, like right before first grade. And at some point in the year, they did this like interview, like where every kid like sat down and they would like ask the kids questions or whatever and record it.
Yeah.
And so like they asked the question of like, what do you like to do? And I was like, I like to draw pictures of lightsabers. That was like what I think. I loved Star Wars.
Hell yeah.
So like I've always like really enjoyed this kind of stuff. So for me, like Spider-Man's got a very special place in my heart. I have a son he's 3.5 and he loves Spider-Man. I'm like, nuts,
I mean, like, what's not to like? I mean, the character, just the sheer concept of the character is so strong.
Yeah.
And I mean, the design of that costume
is perfect.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's so appealing across all ages and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, because, like, it's really cool without being, like, kind of like edgelord cool. Or something like that, you know?
It's, like, simple and clean, but cool. which is
Mm-hmm.
it's that perfect. It strikes that perfect balance. And it's funny,
Yeah, and
so
I mean, like even any kind of like update to it,
yeah,
symbiote costume notwithstanding, does not really veer that far from what Ditko laid down 60 years
yeah,
ago, right?
yeah,
Like, even when they, like, because obviously, like, the MCU version has been, like, kind of tweaked. It's got, like, the, like, black bits,
yeah,
whatever, which I'm not really crazy about. But, like, none of the kind of, like, whole cloth redesigns have ever stuck
yeah, yeah.
for
It's
any
just
real
classic,
duration,
the
with
classic,
again the exception of the symbiote costume, because
right. That's
admittedly,
kind of its. That's
but
kind of its
also the symbiote
own.
costume again, simple and clean,
Right,
right?
right.
It's literally just black with a big white spider on it,
Yeah,
a really well designed big white spider.
yeah,
But yeah, like, you play any of the video games and they always have like all these different costume
right,
skins or
right.
whatever. And like some of them are, it's like, oh, this is kind of fun to like muck around with for a little while, but like you always go back to the red and
Yeah,
blue.
yeah.
Like if he doesn't have, like the clearly identified kind of like web pattern and stuff like that, like it's just
It's not
not
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you can make the same argument for Batman in a lot of ways. Batman's costume has gone through a lot of like minor tweaks and changes, but it all kind of fundamentally stays the exact same,
yeah,
right? Particularly
yeah,
particularly in the comics. Like obviously the movies are sort of like a different animal, but it's kind of like the gray unitard with the scalloped gloves and the pointy ears and
yeah.
bat symbol on the chest with or without a yellow
Right.
oval around it. And is his predominant color black or blue? But other than that,
It's the
that's
same
pretty much just
core
always
design,
what he
the same
looks
silhouette,
like.
the same silhouette.
Right, right.
Remains.
And even when people kind of like push the silhouette, when you've got like Tim Sale's version with like the giant, or Kelly Jones with like the giant ears, or right now what they're doing with Absolute Batman, where he's like this giant tank of a human being,
Yeah,
it's still fundamentally gray unitard, big bat symbol, pointy,
yeah,
pointy ears, big cape,
yeah.
whatever. Because like it looks cool. Everybody
Right.
likes the way it looks.
Right, right.
So
100%. Yeah.
yeah,
So for
yeah.
me, so for me, Spider-Man's definitely got a special place. And then also, another one of my favorites. I guess this really falls more into graphic novel, but that's Watchmen. I mean, that was when I first read Watchmen. That was real. I really actually I saw the movie first, and then went to the graphic novel after. But for me, like that was the first time that I felt, because I read it when I was like early teens, I want to say, and that was the first time that I really felt. Again, I'm not a huge comic book consumer, but that was the first time that I really felt that like it could be a medium that's like more mature. I guess that's when I really like kind of got that
Yeah, and I mean
sense.
that's kind of Watchmen's role
No, for sure,
in
100%.
in the sort of like oeuvre of comics.
Yeah,
Is it sort of like that? It's kind of I can't really think of a great analogy. I was trying to think of like a movie or something, like the movie that lets you know like there's more to movies than just like stuff blowing
right,
up,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah, I mean that's not to take anything away from Watchmen. Let me be very clear about that. But it is very much sort of that
the classic.
first kiss
Yeah.
of, oh, this opens up a whole new world to me,
Yeah,
that it's a medium, not a genre,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because a lot of people think comics are a genre, which they're not. It's a medium that contains multitudes of genres. But yeah, like the average person on the street, what are comics? Oh, it's those stories about superheroes.
Right, right.
And it's like, Mouse isn't about superheroes. Persepolis isn't about superheroes. You could argue whether Hellboy is about superheroes or not.
I love Hellboy. That was another one. I mean, I was introduced to Hellboy through the movies, the Guillermo del Toro movies.
Most people were.
Yeah.
Like even people
I
who
love
knew
those.
Hellboy, like even like, because I mean, I knew of Hellboy for a long time, but I was like, I kind of like my Marvel and DC stuff. I'm not really sure how I feel about that. But yeah, like I went and saw the movie and I was like, oh, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it literally wasn't until after college that I finally gave Hellboy like an actual shot. And I mean, I just blitzed through those.
Really?
I mean, I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
It was so good. It was just so incredible. And, you know, it's one of those things like, oh my God, what have I been doing not reading this?
Yeah.
Literally my entire life. Because now that I think about it, Hellboy has been around, not literally my entire life, but my entire, like, cognizant life.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
like my entire
Right.
life of being, like, aware of the world around me and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, you know, better late than never.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then
But, yeah,
I met
Hellboy
the
is
artist
fantastic.
at Lightbox a few years back. He had a booth there. And
Mike is a really nice guy too.
yeah, he was
It's
selling like original sketches of Hellboy. It was so
Oh,
cool,
yeah.
and it was really cool. It was cool to meet him and like cool to see his original like artwork and stuff. It was
His
that was a
pencils
cool
are like
experience.
just as cool as his inks. Like they're just as fully realized pieces of art
yeah,
as
yeah,
like the finished ink, or even because like he does paintings and stuff too. Like it's wild to me how someone can be that kind of like effortlessly good. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, like I know that Mike works really, really, really hard to be as talented as he is.
but he makes it look easy.
But yeah, like you look at like the sketchbook stuff, you know, like in the back of certain collected editions, you know, that kind of like bonus material or whatever. And it's like, I don't think that he's spending a whole lot of time on each one of these drawings,
Yeah,
you know, because he's just trying to like figure something out. But each one of these little drawings for like, what should this tentacle look like for this
Yeah,
monster
yeah.
or whatever, is like, that's like a perfect drawing. Like that's a perfect collection of lines and shapes,
yeah.
and you're
he's
just kind of
really
like
he's really
bonking
a
it
master of
out.
his craft. Yeah,
yeah, and you know it makes me really excited to see him be, and not to get kind of like, I don't really even know what word I would use here, but like it is really cool to also see him see financial success with that,
yeah,
right? Like there are a lot of talented artists out there who never actually are able to like reasonably provide for their family
right,
or
right.
whatever. So for Mike to be not only really, really good, but actually sort of like his rewards equal how talented he is,
Mm-hmm.
that's really cool to me.
Yeah,
Like, because he will drop, you know, like, oh, here's some like random sketches I've done into my web store on, you know, they're dropping on Friday at 10 a.m., whatever.
yeah,
He drops them, it'll be like 12 to 15 pieces, and, you know, they're just like pencil drawings of Hellboy or skulls and tuxedos, you know, skeletons and
Yeah.
tuxedos or whatever. And they're like $1,500, $2,000 a pop, and they're gone like that.
yeah, yeah,
And it's like, that is awesome to me.
Yeah.
Like the amount of cartoonists I know that can barely manage to sell like a $20 anything.
yeah,
And, you know, like, I view it as like, we should celebrate the guys who are able to actually see financial success for their skill level. Like, I love that Jim Lee can charge $15,000 for a commission or whatever,
Right.
because Jim is that good.
right.
Same with Mignola, same with, you know, like Paul Pope, or, you know, like, this is kind of getting like inside baseball, but it's not really like an artist collective, but there's an art dealer whose name is Felix, and he represents a lot of particularly kind of like newer talent: James Herron, Andrew McLean, Trad Moore, Philippe Andrade, yada yada yada. But he's kind of done a lot to kind of like elevate the floor of like what people should be charging for original art,
Mm-hmm.
because like this is artwork.
Right.
You know, like these people have dedicated a lot of time and energy to their craft, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, if that rising tide can raise all ships, you
Yeah.
know, more power to it or
Yeah,
whatever. Because,
absolutely.
yeah, like, there are certain pages of JL8 that take me literally a full work week to draw. Like 40 hours worth of drawing. You know, I might be able to sell it for like a couple $100.
Right.
or whatever. That's not a great,
For sure.
That's not a great return on investment.
Exactly.
So yeah, like when I see friends who are selling covers for like $40,000 or something, it's like, hell yeah, dude, like get paid.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about JLA, but before we ask about that specifically, I want to more of like a general question. That is, so one thing that like really drew me to your work is, I found you on Instagram initially.
I'm not sure how often that happens. Instagram being the source of people discovering it.
It was your artwork of like superheroes as kids. That whole thing you got going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this specifically. Which piece really really did it for me was you had that commission piece, the Spider-Man on the playground with like all the villains.
Oh yeah,
on the jump. And that was like, first of all an amazing piece. I'm obsessed with that piece.
I'm very proud of that piece. So
everything
thank
about
you very much.
It's just it's perfect. I can't give you a high enough praise for that piece. And so I'm kind of curious, like, how'd you kind of find that style of doing these like superheroes as kids? Because it's really unique.
Yeah, kind of like accidentally, really. Drawing children was never like my shtick, growing up or anything like that. It really came essentially out of necessity. And what I mean by that is, so forgive me, this is kind of a long-winded answer to what should be like a simple question, but I went to school down in Savannah where you don't really need a car. It's a very walkable city, but I'm from St. Louis. I moved back to St. Louis, which is a very drivable city. You kind of need a car. So when I moved back home after college, I didn't have a car, and the thing that I was working on at the time was a kind of like pseudo-autobiographical comedy called Gifted. So here I am, I've got this project on my drafting table with no way to actually go get the reference needed to work on it. Because like I said, I don't have a car. So I'm like, okay, I need to just kind of like, between now and when I get a car, like open myself up to come up with some kind of an idea for something to work on just to keep me busy.
Yeah.
Right. Until I get the car and can get back to work on Gifted. Because if I just sit here and do nothing, tomorrow will never come. Kind of a deal. So I was working at my dad's warehouse, just doing sorting work on a conveyor belt, which is fairly mindless. And one day, to quote Ray Stantz, it just kind of popped in there. I just sort of had this idea of like, like it'd be kind of funny if, a comic about Superman as a kid, kind of like as a puppy, the way that puppies like don't fully know their size or strength sometimes, they got these like big old puppy paws or like really sharp puppy teeth. And like sometimes they can kind of like cause damage. They're not trying to,
right?
But it can have kind of like unintended consequences. And I had this, the very first kind of like gag I had in my head didn't actually end up showing up into JL8 until way later. But it was that like Clark would be on the playground pushing other kids on the swing set, accidentally like launching them, across the county or whatever. And once I had that idea, I was like, oh, that's that's kind of funny. What would, and then, it kind of like opens you up to like, oh, like what would Batman be like in that same concept? Or like what would Wonder Woman be? Yada, yada, yada. And very quickly, and I do think some of this happened quickly because growing up, I was I still am a huge fan of Arthur, Mark Brown's, Arthur the Aardvark.
Yeah, sure.
Arthur. So it's kind of like, oh, like I could kind of do like a Justice League thing, sort of like in the vein of like Arthur or Peanuts, like they're classic kids. So it was really the story idea that necessitated, you need to learn how to draw kids now. Because I don't think I'd ever drawn a child before. Or if I had, it hadn't really been with any degree of regularity. And if you look back at early JL8s, I don't know how to draw kids. So, like I took it upon myself I looked at, like a lot of Toriyama's work with like young Trunks and Goten from Dragon Ball, or original Dragon Ball when Goku was a kid. I was looking at not really Peanuts because it's so stylized,
Yeah.
but like a little bit like Calvin and Hobbes and all this other stuff. So, like I really took it upon myself to like, oh, like if you're going to be drawing this thing about kids, work to get better at drawing kids. And then, J-Elite kind of takes off and people like the concept. So they start commissioning me. Oh, can you do this character as a young kid or that character as a young kid or whatever? It was never like, hey, I'm the kid guy.
Right.
It was just people like the idea. So they kept kind of requesting it of me. And I just keep doing it.
Yeah.
There's not really a whole lot of time where like I've drawn kid stuff purely for fun, if that makes any sense. In the sense of like in my own like free time, if I were to draw. I mean, I guess sometimes I've done it, but yeah, 'cause I have a friend, Naomi Romero, who like they basically just draw dogs, like here's what All Might would look like as a dog, or whatever. And I'm pretty sure that is all that they do. And I hope that doesn't sound like disparaging or something like that. But like that really is like that's just what they love to draw.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, the kid thing, and I also don't want to make it sound like I don't enjoy doing it. Like I do enjoy doing it.
But it's not like that's not your passion. It's not like what you love to do. It's just kind of came to you like, almost.
I just love to draw.
Right.
And I particularly love drawing relationships. I love drawing people interacting with each other.
I was going to say.
I love drawing expressions. I love drawing body language. Whether it's little kids on the playground or like, because my pseudo-autobio thing took place like in high school. Yeah. Or, Forward Horizon is more like traditional it's about like a young adult, like 18-year-old protagonist or whatever. I just like drawing people talking and interacting with each other.
Yeah. I was gonna say I really enjoy your Batman and Catwoman, like those panels that you do.
Yeah,
they're all so fun. Like like as kids, just the energy that you put into the images, like you can really feel it when you look at them.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it is something I put a lot of effort into, and yeah, I mean, like the thing that is kind of fun about superheroes that I'm familiar with, that's the caveat. Yeah, is I know them well enough that I can kind of like have fun with.
Like playing around with them.
Yeah, because it is a real struggle for me when someone commissions a character that I don't really have a whole lot of knowledge or investment in. Yeah. Mostly because I don't want to just resort to like hands on hips and that be it, because I don't think that's what they're coming to me for. Right. So that like if somebody came to me with, I don't know, America Chavez. I don't know why she popped in there, but she's like I like the fact that like, oh, she's like a BIPOC character in Marvel. We need more of those, but like I don't really know that much about her. So if somebody were to commission America from me, I'm going to be on Wikipedia, I'm going to be on YouTube, I'm going to be on social media hitting up friends of mine who might know better, like, what is she like? What are, like, I can find her power set, no problem. That's whatever. Right. But like, what is her personality? What are her canonical interests? Who does she hang out with? Yada, yada, yada. So that I can hopefully give my client a piece that feels like that character to them. Yeah. It doesn't just look like the character. It feels like the character. Yeah. Right? Does that make any sense?
100%. So let me ask you, like, from like a technical standpoint, how do you, with the character, let's just take one that you're familiar with, because to make it easier, like with, let's say, Batman and Catwoman, like, how do you infuse that feeling into the image?
It's tough. It's tough because, and sometimes it can be harder with it's almost as hard with characters that you're like really familiar with as it is with characters that you're not familiar with. One is almost like an absence of ideas. The other is almost too many ideas, right? It's almost choice paralysis or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like fundamentally what is Batman and Catwoman's relationship, and it's a kind of like almost like very textbook. I think they call it like sandbox syndrome, like how little kids kind of like bully each other when a little boy likes a girl, so he pulls her hair.
Yeah.
Or the girl likes a boy, so she, gives him a wedgie or something.
Yeah.
It's like this kind of like backwards way of showing someone that you like them. It's like almost like an antagonistic thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, how can Catwoman bother Batman? Because fundamentally, that's what the relationship is. She is doing something he doesn't approve of.
Right.
Whether it's she's a burglar or it's, she's just annoying him by, I don't know, it's a New Year's party and she's blowing one of those like things in his ear.
Right. And you're doing
because
it as
fundamentally,
kids,
Batman is kind of like the straight man to Catwoman's free spirit.
Yeah.
Right? So then it becomes, okay, like if that's sort of like the baseline. And, sometimes people are like, they're my favorite couple. So it might be like, okay, but at the end of the day, they do really care about each other. So we'll go that direction instead. Instead of it being that I'm annoyed with her, we'll go in the direction of like, they actually really, really care about each other. But yeah, it's like, those are the two truths of their relationship.
Yeah.
Then it becomes, okay, which one do I want to choose? How can we convey one of those two truths about their relationship? And it could be Catwoman has stolen Bruce's utility belt and he's chasing after her, trying to hold his pants up.
Yeah.
Or it can be them snuggling up on top of a building, looking up at the moon or something like that.
Right.
But both of those, I feel like those characters. So that's kind of.
So what is it about, in terms of, again, from a technical standpoint, from a illustration standpoint, what are the things? Is it like you're talking about kind of the storytelling, and then is it also the kind of the body language and the composition? Do you kind of pull on those types of technical details as well to convey?
Yeah, I mean, certainly body language and stuff like that. Composition, yes and no. Sometimes composition, almost like the simpler the better, because you're really trying to sell. I'm not really sure how to explain it. But using Catwoman stealing Bruce's utility belt as an example, because that is a piece that I've done.
Yeah.
It's just a straight on profile shot.
Right.
It's just looking at them directly from the side. Because, you could have her, like, running towards camera and being a lot bigger and Bruce kind of, like, trailing behind her. And I wouldn't say that that's necessarily wrong or a bad choice. But it kind of creates a different layer that you don't need to get the joke across. Right? Because I have done I did one, a client wanted them like in their golden age outfits. So Batman with like the little like purple gloves and the long ears and stuff like that. And in that one, Catwoman, it basically is the latter composition where like Catwoman is kind of like running towards camera, Batman is behind her. But you also have the cityscape in the background. And then that kind of gives... The joke there is more about the chase itself, whereas the belt one, the gag is about how she annoys him. Yeah. If that makes any sense. So
for sure,
you're kind of trying to think about it in those terms as well.
In terms of like what's the message I'm trying to give across in this piece?
Right. Because Because, yeah, I mean, sometimes complicated compositions can almost undercut what you're trying to do. Certainly not always. I mean, complicated compositions are awesome and can be really, really cool.
Yeah.
But sometimes they can be, to quote a comedy term that I learned from Seth Meyers, not directly. I heard him talk about it. I don't know Seth Meyers. But it's called like a hat on a hat. It's like you already have a hat, and a hat is great. A hat on top of a hat doesn't add anything and can actually detract from the initial hat. So the question is really about like, what are you trying to convey? What are you trying to accomplish? Because I'm thinking of a really kind of famous painting by Alex Ross of Batman standing atop a building, a gargoyle, whatever. And it's kind of like a high angle shot, even on Batman himself. You're kind of looking down on Batman as he's looking down on the city. And the point of that is Batman is literally overlooking Gotham City.
Yeah.
Right? That's a hard drawing because you got to draw all those buildings. You got to figure out all that perspective, whatever. But it's appropriate for what he's trying to convey with that image. Because what he's trying to convey is Batman, this giant figure above all these buildings, because Batman's in the foreground, so the buildings look smaller. But you're conveying the scale of Gotham City, the sprawl of what he's trying to achieve by, protecting the city, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Because, there are plenty of shots of Batman on top of a gargoyle where you're looking up at him with, like, the moon in the background. Like, there are no buildings in sight. And that's more just like, oh, look at him just looking cool against a full moon or something.
Right.
But you do not sell, zealous guardian of Gotham City with that shot.
Yeah.
Because where's Gotham City? So, when you do what I was talking about that Alex Ross did, that's where that kind of a composition is the appropriate choice. And obviously you can get into the weeds with like subverting and, breaking rules and all these other kinds of things, but, without getting overly complicated about it.
Yeah.
That's kind of thing. I mean, same thing with Spider-Man swinging through the city, right? Like, do some like tilt the buildings or whatever to really give the sense of moving or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. So are you primarily working on your own projects at this point? And you have your JL8 and you're talking about it and your kind of web comics. Is that your kind of full-time work, or do you do and you talk about commission work as well? Do you also contract out to companies, or are you primarily working on your own projects that you want to be doing?
I primarily just work for myself.
That's awesome.
Sure. And honestly, it's not really for lack of wanting to work for anybody else. I just don't really get approached that regularly. And admittedly, I have, because like I know certain editors and stuff, and I have kind of talked to them, and it's kind of almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I basically look at it as like at this point I'm a known quantity. I've been around long enough.
Yeah.
That generally speaking, there's somebody at Marvel, at DC, at any given publisher who knows who I am. So if they wanted me, they'd hit me up.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas I've had editor friends saying like, or they don't hit you up because they think that you're just busy doing your thing and don't want to bother you. And I was like, oh, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
that kind of makes sense. Not to equate myself to a pretty girl at a bar, but like that, you kind of hear those stories about attractive people who like, I've been single for like 8 months because no one asks me out.
Right.
Because they all just assume I'm going to turn them down, or that I've already got a boyfriend, or, whatever. And it's like, yeah, like I feel that. I get that. And I actually have been trying to kind of be better about reaching it. And I mean, like I prefer to just kind of work on JL8 and Forward the Horizon and stuff like that. But like, it'd be fun to like do a cover here or there, or whatever. I've got a bunch of friends who do variants. I didn't realize that they were variants, but variants for Marvel Snap, the digital card game.
Sure.
And I was like, I feel like that'd be fun. Like,
yeah,
I wouldn't mind doing some variants for Marvel Snap if.
Yeah.
So, like, I reached out to some of my friends who I know have worked with them and was like, hey, man, yada, yada, yada. Right. But no, I mean, the short answer is, primarily speaking, yeah, I just work for myself. And
how long have you been doing these webcomics for?
2011. So, wow. 14 years now.
Wow.
But it has not always been a pretty steady 14 years. It's certainly been kind of off and on. I mean, I have not had another job other than comics during that 14-year time, but I have not produced as many webcomics over a 14-year span as a lot of other people would have over that same time frame.
Yeah,
but we're trying to get better about that.
How do you monetize? You have like it's like people subscribe to like a Patreon type of thing, or
all kinds of stuff. I do have a Patreon. Conventions, selling merch at conventions.
Oh, nice.
Like I said, commission work. I do create all my art traditionally, so like original art sales are a big
so
thing.
All your art is done traditionally. You're not doing digital tools. You're not.
I mean, I color digitally, but in terms of like the actual the line art, excuse me, and everything, that's all just pencil and ink.
Why do you choose to do it that way? Like, why do you?
Fact, so here's
nice,
all of JL8 270 so far.
Nice.
I just like it.
You prefer
I just like
traditional
pencils on paper. I like inking with a brush. Yeah, it's quite
like a tactile thing,
personal preference kind of thing.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, like a little bit of it was kind of a little bit of it was necessity. Because like when I was first getting started, there's no world where the laptop that I had at the time would have been able to handle drawing on it. Because originally I was lettering the comics digitally. Like, I was still drawing them, and I would scan them in, and then I'd at least, like, letter them digitally. And, like, my laptop would literally lag in Photoshop typing out the dialogue for the balloons. To the point where I was like, this sucks. I'm just gonna letter these by hand directly onto the board. Which, admittedly, was also kind of a financial decision, because I figured the original art would maybe sell better if it actually had the dialogue on the board, because it is essentially a comedy strip. So, like, is it as appealing if you don't actually have the joke
right
on the original art? And then, like, people started to kind of favorably respond to the lettering. They liked how I letter, I guess. I'm not really sure why. I think it leaves a lot to be desired, but so yeah, I just kind of kept doing it that way. And also, there is kind of something, like, because it's a webcomic, there is a part of me that likes having something physical to prove that I did it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I don't have a bookshelf of collected editions or anything like that. And, like, in the event that I ever do have kids or grandkids or something, it would be cool to be like, here's proof.
Pull it off the shelf. Yeah.
That, like, I did actually, like, here's that drawing that you're looking at on the internet.
Yeah.
Like,
I definitely get that. I definitely understand that. Let me ask you, but, like, so I know for myself, like, when it comes to kind of doing your own projects and kind of being your own boss, like, it can be hard sometimes to kind of keep the creative momentum going.
Yes.
How do you kind of deal with that and, like, burn out?
I fail at it horribly. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to take this in a particularly dark turn, but I mean, like, like my dad passed away, not entirely unexpectedly, but certainly a lot earlier than I ever would have expected him to.
I'm sorry to hear that.
A couple of years ago, it would have been December of 2023. I basically didn't work last year because that's also the latest in a string of basically fairly like high profile passings in my world. My best friend died suddenly in 2018. My great aunt, who was like a third grandma to me, passed almost a year to the day following.
Wow.
A year to the day after that, her daughter died suddenly. Like, there's a reason that I've only posted like 2 JL8s a year for the past couple of years, because I have not handled it well at all. Like, it has been horrifically difficult. I did finally start going to therapy, which was very helpful. I, really started becoming invested in figuring out what kind of like mental health issues I might be struggling with, and found some resources to help with that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, like I'm getting better about it for sure, because like it's really easy when things are going well. Right? Like when JL8 first came out, for starters, when it first came out, you're just doing it for fun. And also, I was like 23. Like, what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
Right? So like that was really easy, and then it started kind of taking off, so then it becomes like the sooner I post the next one, the more dopamine I get.
Right.
But then yeah, like later on, some stuff kind of happened, like I said, friends and loved ones passing away, and a pandemic, and some other stuff. And yeah, it was and has been, and I'm sure will again be really, really, really tough. And like I've tried to do like the kind of like cutesy term is like accountability buddies or whatever, where like you kind of have a friend that every day I'm going to send you a photo of what I accomplished that day or whatever.
Yeah.
And I did find that really helpful. And obviously that's a lot easier when you have physical art.
Right.
Physical, I mean, it could be digital, but like you have something that you can literally show somebody.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, I don't know. I guess most things you could show somebody, but anyway, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's been really helpful. I mean, having an incredibly supportive wife has been very helpful. Someone who's really excited to see my work and, things like that. But no, it's tough. And I mean, like if I were financially able to, I would love to be in a studio environment. Like I have some friends who like that really helped them when they were going through some stuff, was like physically leaving their house to go to a separate place of work, and not just a separate place of work, but like they had other artists also working there. So there was like a community and, all that kind of a thing. Cause yeah, like I do have some friends locally, but like they're like just far enough away that like trying to link up to work someplace together just isn't really feasible and things like that. But no, like it is tough. It is very tough. And it's kind of just trial and I mean, the most important thing is just acknowledging like I'm having a hard time with this.
Right.
Not just like, oh, I'm dealing with depression or, whatever, but like I'm not being as productive as I should be. Then asking why is that? And then just kind of like trial and erroring your way into something that demonstrably is effective.
Yeah.
And repeatably effective. Because like, something might work for like a day or a week, but it might fall off if you don't stick to it or something like that. I mean, most recently, again, I was talking to a really good friend of mine, and he was like, dude, listen, like, just start set the bar as low as possible while still actually achieving, like, just try to work for 1 hour a day for a week and see how that goes. And again, this is like when I'm still kind of dealing with the stuff of my dad and everything. And yeah, like, I worked for 1 hour. In fact, I think I started off with 2 hours a day, but I was like, okay. And some days I would feel like I wanted to do more, but I was like, stick to the plan.
Right.
Because I don't always look it, but I have, through various points in my life, been a bit of a gym rat, and overdoing it that first time that you come back is a great way to set yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
Because instead of being willing to go to the gym again the next day, you wake up super sore and super tired, and it's like, oh, like, I'm going to take today off and I'll go tomorrow, and then 3 months go by before you finally actually get back again.
Yeah.
And then it kind of also generated almost like an eagerness to work the next day, because I'm denying myself this thing that I want. So yeah, like, I did like two hours a day for a week, and I was like, okay, like, I'm going to shoot for 3 hours a day for the following week and just work my way back to 8 hours a day, full 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
And it worked really well. I mean, it did kind of have some issues because I hit 40 hours right as we went into the high holidays. And, all these other obligations kind of throw things off a little bit. And I've kind of been struggling getting back to full 40 since the new year. But I have still been working every day, and I've found that really helpful, because one thing for me, and I feel like it's not entirely uncommon, but obviously everybody's different. A great way to continue to fail is to try to do too much, which you will then fail.
Right.
And feel even worse about yourself.
But you kind of spiral.
Right. So it's like, oh man, like, I'm so down on myself. I've gotten so weak because I haven't been hitting the gym. I'm going to try to whatever your previous best bench was. I used to be able to rep like 180. It's like, okay, like, I'm going to try to rep like 160. That'll be fine. No. Like, just do a bare bar for the first day.
Yeah.
And then just start working your way up. Because then you're going to try to bench 160, drop it on yourself in front of the whole gym, feel like a complete idiot and be embarrassed and not want to go back.
Right.
Yada, yada, yada. And there was one thing I heard, I feel like I've heard it a couple times, but like, people are really bad. They overestimate what they can do in a day, but underestimate what they can do in a year. And I think,
I like that.
Like, there's a part of me that like wants to like print that out and like post it somewhere, because I'm very guilty of that. Like when I would try to get back on track, I would create a to-do list of like, oh, I'm going to do this tomorrow and that tomorrow and that tomorrow. And I would barely get halfway through the first thing. And I would get so down on myself for not even being able to accomplish the first thing in its entirety, much less these other two things. So it's like, okay, like, as long as you're working, as long as you're doing something, that's good enough for right now. And sure, like, once you have a better grasp on like what is reasonable to try to achieve in a given day, like what does my normal output look like? And then I can like, okay, maybe I'll try to stretch tomorrow. Like, maybe generally I get like 2 panels drawn a day. Maybe tomorrow I'll try to get 3 drawn a day or something like that. Yeah. But it's like, if you haven't drawn in 3 weeks and you're like, I'm going to draw 2 pages tomorrow, that's not going to happen.
Right.
like that's probably just not going to happen.
Right.
So trying to figure out sort of like what does work for you, and then set goals accordingly, I think is a really important part in setting yourself up for a degree of success. Yeah. Because success feeds more success. you can kind of spiral upward the same way you can spiral downward. It's harder to spiral upward than it is to spiral downward. But there is an element to the idea that you can spiral upward. And yeah, it's just building healthy habits, setting realistic expectations, yada, yada, yada. But I do feel, and that's how you accomplish more over the course of a year than you might expect, because before you know it, some days you're working 8.5 hours because you kind of got sucked into work or whatever. Right. And, you look back and you're like, oh, wow, like I really thought I was only going to get X done this past year, but I actually got 1.2 times that done, which, like 1.2 doesn't sound like a lot, but it's better than just one.
Right. Or less than one.
Or less than one. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's very, very well said.
But yeah, again, I know I said it, but like everybody's different. You got to figure out what works for you. Right. And like that's something that my wife and I would talk about, because she really wanted to be supportive. And she would, admit to me, like, I'm not entirely sure what the best way to support you is. Like, I feel like tough love, you shut down. Like, you don't respond well to that. Yeah. Or, if I am too understanding, I feel like it enables you. Or, these kinds of things.
Like kind of striking that balance.
Right. Because, some people, tough love really does work. And, for me personally, I feel like tough love from strangers is more effective for me than tough love from people I care about, because I'm stubborn and resentful. Yeah. And if a stranger is being a jerk to me, I'm going to be like, all right, like, let's go. Like, whereas if the person who I think is supposed to like be loving and caring to me is being tough on me, I'm just like, what did I do wrong? I feel horrible. Yeah. Yada, yada, yada. And some people are built the complete opposite. They don't give a crap what strangers say, but if their dad or partner, whoever is hard on them, like it really fires them up. Right. So yeah, it at the end of the day, self-awareness is the biggest part to success. And like just being aware of what works for you, what doesn't work for you, when things, like when you're not doing as well as you should, yada, 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 all that. Just being aware is a huge part of being successful and like working for yourself and all that jazz. Yeah. I can be very long-winded. I apologize.
No, you're fine. That's good. It's interesting because I find a lot of conversations are more about like the artwork, but it's really good to like understand the kind of like the necessary components that kind of go into like maintaining healthy habits to maintain your creativity, because creativity in general I find is it's like a slippery fish, like,
oh my god, yeah,
if you try and grab it, like it's gonna escape, and if you're too loose, it's gonna like, you have to kind of get that perfect balance where you're not trying too hard, but you're also not trying, it's very hard to strike that balance, to find that sort of flow state that that everyone talks about.
Yeah, and like one of the more recent examples. So one of the times I did try to work last year while I was kind of reeling from my dad's passing, I did kind of like a recreation of one of my favorite Silver Age Marvel covers from Tales of Suspense 58. And I worked really, really hard on it. Like I told myself like this is going to be a labor of love. Go as hard as you want on it, yada, yada, yada. And making it was amazing. But when I posted it and it didn't do hardly anything at all, really messed me up. Because I put all this energy and effort and I was so proud of it. And a lot of my friends were really high on it too. They were like, oh my God, dude, like this is like one of the best things you've ever done. Telling me like what I should be able to sell it for or whatever. And to post it on the internet to just like complete crickets really took my legs out from under me. Mm-hmm. So when I decided like I really, really need to try to get back to working on JL8, I told myself I am not going to start posting until I've already got like 10 in the can. The reason being, if I'm posting them just like as I'm making them, if I post the first one and it doesn't do what I hope it does, like if people aren't excited to see it again, or people are like mean about it or whatever, the next one's not coming for another however many months, because it's going to take me that long to recover. Whereas like, and I mean, we've done it, so like we can, and people were really nice about, like, and people were really excited about it and cool about it. But I've already got the other one in the chamber, and not just the other one, 8 more.
Yeah.
Right. So like, and now for me personally, I have this kind of like separate driving factor, which is like, how big of a lead can I build? Like seeing nice comments and everything is cool. I'm not going to pretend that like that doesn't impact me, but I'm kind of chasing a different sense of satisfaction right now. Like, how far ahead can I go?
Yeah. I think that's healthier than chasing.
Oh, it's 100% healthier.
So like
looking for validation on the internet is like about as fundamentally unhealthy as it can possibly be.
Right.
But yeah, like having that part not be as big a part of the equation.
Yeah.
Finding a way to kind of minimize its significance. Because it's not what is driving me to the next stop.
Yeah.
The next stop just being the next update. I feel like that has been a pretty dramatic shift for me.
Yeah. How often are you posting JL8
so
issues?
Right now I'm only posting 1 a week, just because right now that's about as much as I can produce in a week.
And how much is in, like, it's how does it work in terms of what's being put out?
It's literally just 1 page. One page update per week. I'm hoping that the reason that it was taking so long to draw pages the last however long was because like it's a dinner sequence in a kitchen, and kitchens are hard to draw, man. Like there's a lot of stuff in kitchen. Like if you care about making it look like an actual kitchen, and by that I mean like it looks like it actually is like lived in and belongs to these people, right? It's the same thing with like a living room or a bedroom or whatever. Like the fancy term is like mise en scène. Like what books do you put on the bookshelf? If you're close enough to be able to like see the spines of the book.
Yeah.
What posters do they have on the wall? Do they have posters on the wall? All those kinds of things are important because that's what tells you stuff about the character. So yeah, like having a refrigerator with like pictures and magnets and trying to remember like where are they placed on the refrigerator,
and also since you're doing it traditionally, you have to redraw it each time. You can't just copy and paste it, from panel to panel.
So yeah, I mean, and admittedly, like some of it was also having come back from such a long hiatus. There was also a lot of nervousness just around my skill at drawing. So I got really, really invested in like getting really in the weeds with like laying out perspective and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because it's almost literally a science. So like if you do it right, it's right.
Yeah.
Like you almost can't draw something bad if you're drawing it following rules of perspective.
Right.
So if you're concerned that like I'm not sure how good I am at drawing anymore, following these rules ensure that like there's like a fundamental baseline of quality there. So that's actually something I'm kind of trying to like wean myself off of because it does eat up so much time. But yeah, I mean, like I said earlier in the conversation, I mean, some of those pages literally took like 45 hours to draw. I mean, in a perfect world, I would prefer to be posting at least 2 a week, 2 new
Mm-hmm.
JL8 strips a week. But I just don't want to get literally ahead of myself. By
Yeah.
which I mean like put out more than I can create in the
Right.
same time
Right.
it takes me to put them out. So yeah, I mean, like, hopefully one day I get back to being able to draw 2 to 3 pages a week. And I mean, if I can draw 3, I'll still probably stick to 2 so that I'm just like always
Right. Always ahead of the game.
creating a buffer. And I feel like given my content, 2 a week feels okay. But yeah, so right now we're just doing 1 a week. But aspiring to get back to 2 a week.
Yeah. Nice. So, one last question is to wrap it up. This is a question I try to pose to all my guests, and we kind of touched upon it before, but I kind of want to pose the question, kind of get like one, wrapped up answer, if you will, and that is how do you define success?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I can give you 2 answers. One is how I define it, and the other is how I wish I defined it.
Okay.
Right now, I think I define it through very superficial means. Engagement on the internet, financial return, etc., etc. How I would like to define it would be, is it something that you're proud of? Just full stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are a couple of reasons I say that, but one of which is like, I am proud of pretty much all the work I've done. I work really hard to be proud of the work I've done.
Yeah.
There are a lot of eraser shavings in my trash can and on my floor because I'm really trying to make sure that I never put out something that I'm embarrassed of or just not proud of.
Yeah.
But I really would like to work towards getting to a point where that in and of itself feels like success to me.
Mm-hmm.
Just posting something that I can be like, I made that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
good. That being good enough.
Yeah.
That's very much something I aspire to, for sure.
No, I can tell you, I think that you should be proud of everything you do, because I really, like I said, I'm a big fan of your work. I really.
No, I mean, I
really
authentically appreciate that. Like,
yeah, it's really, really excellent, and that's what caught my attention. And it was just, when I first saw it, it was so different than anything I've seen, and so it was just, I don't know, it hit a certain part of my brain that just like made all the dopamine receptors light up.
no, man, I mean, I love hearing it. Like, I am grateful for the fact that I've not become disillusioned to positive response.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
For sure.
I mean, and this is a little bit, champagne problem or whatever, but like I have received a lot of positive response. Like,
yeah,
a lot of people do really like JL8 and are vocal about the fact that they like it.
Yeah.
But I really don't take that for granted. And it really means a lot when people express it.
Yeah.
I'll admit I'm maybe a little bit desensitized to kind of like we'll just call them the HBD name posts, like when on Facebook when it's your birthday and somebody literally just types out like HBD Mosh, and it's like, that's not really a birthday wish.
Yeah.
That's just a message.
Right.
But like the message, like the compliments and stuff I receive when people like type out clearly, and it doesn't have to be fancy, but like essentially like a thought out compliment.
Yeah.
That never gets old to me.
Yeah.
When people have like a clear sort of like point of view in their expression of positivity or whatever like that. That always
I make it a point.
Does a lot to me. for me.
I make it a point, like, let's say on Instagram, like when I see a piece of artwork that I really like, you know, you go to the comments and everyone's like, oh, you know, like fire emojis, or this is awesome, or it's like, okay, like,
yeah, and like it's great to get that stuff. It is fun, but like when someone's like, oh man, like I really like the way that this character interacts with that character, man.
No, I always try to do that. I try to like to say like if there's a piece that I really like, I try to say like what is I like about it, because I know that, you know, speaking out, the more, and I know for myself, like when somebody's like, oh, I like that you did X, Y, and Z in this piece, that I know that they actually are genuinely, you know, they actually mean, they actually took the time to, there's something about it that actually caught their attention. It's not like, oh, I'm trying to engagement farm here, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And it is wild, man. Like we've hit a point where taking literally like 3 to 5 seconds to type out a comment and send it is the like heavy lifting option. Right, as opposed to literally just like double tapping to like it or whatever. Yeah. But hey, man, like that's the truth for better and for worse. Yeah. Because when someone does leave an actual comment, even though it only took them a couple of seconds to type it, it goes 1,000 miles further. Than just that little heart emoji. Yeah. Or whatever. For sure. And again, like it's all good. Like, you're happy to get any kind of money, right? Yeah. But, like, the heart emoji is like $1. An actual comment is like $1,000. Yeah. Right? Yeah. In terms of, like, the piggy bank of feeling good and...
positive feedback.
Exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
Where can people find you online? Where's, you know, all your...
I'm kind of all over the place, except for... Twitter/X now, because I want nothing to do with that platform anymore. But for most of it, Instagram, Blue Sky is just my name, Yale Stewart.
Cool. And then where can people find JL8 and all your webcomics?
So JL8, it lives a couple places, like most formally. It lives on Facebook, facebook.com/JL8comic, and Tumblr. I believe it's jl8comic.tumblr.com. But I post them both at Facebook and Tumblr, and also Instagram, also Blue Sky, also my Patreon.
Awesome.
Which I guess my Patreon is patreon.com/Yale Stewart. I think that's what it would be. It is nice to have a relatively unique name, because you can generally just use your name for stuff. Yeah.
But on all the platforms, that's your name. That's where people find you.
There are no platforms that I'm operating under some kind of handle or something like that. If you were to type in Yale Stewart on any given platform, I'm either there or I'm not. Right. So...
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for reaching out, man. I had a really great time talking, and me too. Really enjoyed it.
And please keep in touch, and we'll hope to have you on again.
Yeah. I would love to come back and do this again, like a year or something, and see if
for sure
any of my tips for turning the corner on productivity and stuff have kept up.
Yeah, for sure. We'll do a year from now check-in.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you.